We're live.
Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. I'd like to call to order the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee meeting for May 23rd. First order of business is to approve the minutes of our prior meeting. A motion by Supervisor Smith, second Supervisor Conover. Any discussion or question on those? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Privilege of the floor. I know we've got a couple of guests from the Warren County SPCA. Would you like to say something up front? Yeah, right at the podium, please. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Jen House from Warren County SPCA. We were here last week. We'd asked the Warren County Board of Supervisors to extend the deadline for the RFP, which was agreed to in the meeting and at our departure from the meeting. Several hours later, we received an email from the Warren County purchasing agent, Julie Butler, that no extension could be given and that the notice of RFP was sent to organizations registered with New York State Ag and Markets. It would seem to make sense that it should have also been sent to the Department of Criminal Justice, since animal cruelty is included in the RFP and is outside the legal purview of a shelter to enforce. As I mentioned last week, for New York State not-for-profit corporations, Article 14, Section 1403, any corporation for the prevention of cruelty to animals may exercise its powers and conduct its operations in any adjacent county in which no such corporation exists until the establishment of a corporation therein, meaning there can be only one. We have a new board of directors, a new mission, and our entity of assumed name, North Country Humane Society, WCSPCA Inc., which reflects our desire to work with those on the same mission as us, regardless of geography. That is to protect and defend the abused, the abandoned, and the neglected. Thank you.
Thank you. Our county attorney's not here today, but for our county administrator, I'd like to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were a couple of reasons. We were looking at our timelines for the contract, the RFP that we had released. And again, we said it was sent to the Ag and Markets Bureau, everyone who had registered with that. And I don't think it was the decision that we made not to send to the criminal justice. I think we just believed that it belonged in Ag and Markets and everything that the advice from our county attorney upheld that. So we, in order to release the to extend the RFP, we would have had to pull this RFP, release another one for 2 weeks, and then extend the process beyond the June board meeting. We believe the situation is such that we need to take some action at the June board meeting. That's what we were targeting. So we were hoping that Warren County SPCA could submit a proposal against the 7 minimum requirements that are in the RFP that seemed pretty straightforward. Looking forward to maybe getting a proposal from them as well. And we don't, right now at this point, we don't have any proposals. So on Thursday, but we may have to go out with another RFP anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. Will you be able to submit something by Thursday?
I will not be able to submit the Thursday. Our attorney is not coming back today.
Do me a favor, just go to the podium so everybody can read. The question was, will you be able to submit a proposal by Thursday?
We will not be able to get that in by Thursday, no. Our attorney will be back in town late tonight. We have insurance to get. That's not something that we can get overnight. We were caught off guard by this. I will be the first to admit we've been trying to get ourselves reorganized. All of a sudden, we were made aware of your meeting last month, which kind of set the ball running, meaning we had to put our pedal to the metal and get this moving. So we've got a lot of things to put in place at this point. We have 3 officers who are plug and play, ready to go. We are talking to different entities regarding the sheltering requirement. So that's something that we can begin working toward resolution on. But we just don't have all of the pieces in place at this very moment. But from the from the animal cruelty piece of it, we have the officers and that is something that we're ready to go with.
Okay, well, I mean, go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure that I have anything to add. I believe the RFP was a little bit beyond the animal cruelty. Thought that a shelter would probably be necessary to be able to house animals. We also know that because we have one organization trying to rehome animals right now in the county, and there are no vacancies at most of the county shelters that we know, and even in adjacent counties, they're having challenges rehoming some of the animals that they have in the current shelter. So I think without a shelter, we were concerned that it might not meet our requirements, but we want to have a proposal.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this from the committee members? All right. All right, well, thank you for being with us this morning.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, we appreciate it. We'll move to the probation agenda. Our director here.
Morning.
Morning. First request you've got us to amend resolution 369 of 2020 to include, if any further funding becomes available during the term of the contract, no further resolution will be necessary to accept these funds, and the chair of the board is authorized to execute any documents necessary to receive the funds.
Yes, thank you. What we're looking to do is amend the original resolution 369 of 2020, of 2020. This has to do with our Y Reconnects grant. Originally, the grant was in the amount of $35,000. Through the last couple of years, we've received a little bit of excess money, so we're going to get an additional $6,000. And to accept that and sign some forms for Cornell, for the chairman's signature, we needed to amend it to accept a little extra money.
Okay. Motion moves for Supervisor McGowan. Second, Supervisor Smith. Any questions or discussion on it? Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So just as a protocol here on 369, it was originally to go for a grant for $35,000. But now, did you go for more grant, or did they award you more?
They awarded us. There was originally 4 counties involved. It was down to 3. So there was a little bit of extra money that was able to be divvied out. So we didn't apply for anything more. They had extra money and they made it available.
Okay.
How often does that happen?
Not very.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, and yeah, so is this request to change the resolution to accept the money coming from the treasurer's department or the county attorney, or where?
It would be coming, I mean, in essence, it would be coming through our department because we need the chairman to sign off on the form. So other than myself, I mean, the treasurer has no input into it. They haven't, so it's a matter of signing forms, I believe.
Anything else? We have a motion. We have a second. Supervisor Conover.
Well, just a point, perhaps for the county administrator, I think when we have resolutions like this, that authorizing the chairman to execute any and all agreements associated with the grant is language that I think should be in there. Otherwise, you can't very well be administering the grant very well, bouncing back and forth to a full board. I mean, at the town level, I know that's what we do, is we say, once we make the decision, okay, we're going to do this, and then we authorize the appropriate party to take all actions necessary, which would include a revision upward like the one you're talking about. And they can always communicate that back to the board, and should communicate that back to the board, but I think that kind of language should be coming, right? Resolutions. That's just my thinking.
Okay.
Right. And my questions were along those lines too. It's just streamlining the process. Seems to be a little cumbersome. We want to accept money, no cost to the town, to the county, etc. And to go through all of this is a bit cumbersome. So if there's ways to make it more efficient, we should do that.
Agreed. I mean, possibly should we do a grant again, maybe we could put that language in to begin with, or fix the amount of receive everything. It's unusual that we would receive extra money, so.
Go ahead.
Like to yield some time to Ms. Di Lorenzo. She has some comments.
I just noticed that this goes back to 2020. We're now writing grants to say modifications, extensions, increases in funding, authorizing the chair through that one resolution, but that this went back to 2020. So going forward, we should have that language in all the other grants.
Good. Anything else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have 3 discussion items, all of which we have said some discussion previously. The first one is about the temporary adolescent defender placements.
Yes, just an update. We still have that individual in Oneida County Jail. We believe a resolution will be coming this month, and we've submitted claims for 2022. And once he's done with 2023, we will submit further claims to the state and follow through with those. So we're hoping that that matter resolves within the next couple of weeks.
Do you have an approximate amount of how much we've spent so far on this individual?
We're probably in the neighborhood of about 300,000.
$300,000.
Which is what we've appropriated. Is that correct?
Well, is it reimbursable?
It's 100% reimbursable. Getting money out of the state for Raise the Age is no easy quest. But we keep on them. We've revised our Raise the Age plan. We submitted the appropriate documentation, and I follow through with them on a regular basis. Last year, we were able to move some money in my budget, I think for about 90,000. This year, we appropriated 300,000. We spent about 200,000 of the money that was appropriated for 2023.
Thank you. The second item we discussed previously, that's about the garden project.
And I'll defer to Amy on that one, so I could just finish up with electronic monitoring, and then I could have her come just give a quick update.
Okay,
For electronic monitoring, we haven't used electronic monitoring for juveniles and adolescents in a couple of years. We had contracts for probably about 20 years. We stopped it when the pandemic happened, when we were looking to revise funding and things that we weren't really utilizing. And through the years, up to recently, detention has never really been an issue for us. We had electronic monitoring, which is, in the neighborhood of $15 a day, as opposed to the extreme cost we're paying now. It makes sense in some cases. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but I think in the next few months, when we revise our STSJP plan, which includes probation and DSS, different type of programming and funding, we may want to talk about having electronic monitoring available for the courts. Again, it's not going to take care of this kid we have in Oneida County Jail, but there may be some other ones that come up. Instead of secure detention, we can try electronic monitoring, which in essence will buy us a little time, and maybe it's a solution. So we're not paying these amounts of money for this type of thing. But we're going to do an STSJP plan. We may have some additional funding that maybe we can have access through in the next couple of months, that so when we come back, if we look to do electronic monitoring, we'll look to say, here's some options for funding. So those are just things I wanted to put out there so we can start the discussion and maybe, have some alternatives in place again for our rising detention numbers. And the youth we see coming in, they're difficult. That's not going to get any better. And the state's indicated that there will be no beds for the next 3-4 years. So I think we just need to think of some alternatives moving forward.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. Bob, I really appreciate you bringing this to us, also with the how I spoke about the detention issue and the amount of money, but this electronic monitoring, I'm actually kind of surprised that it slipped away. I mean, I imagine a lot of these juveniles are really not, hardened criminals, just need a little, as my father would say, a backhand adjustment every now and then, to attitude adjustment, I guess. But no, this is a good way of, especially with the bail reform and not being able to keep anybody in jail, that this, and it's just a close monitor. it's a burdensome, so that I've seen on TV, how everybody tries to get out of them in that, but really do appreciate all you do. Thank you for the probation, so thank you.
Any other questions on this issue? Supervisor
Yeah,
Leggett?
Mr. Chairman, is this all part of like an overall plan of a least restrictive means for?
It would be with electronic monitoring, we would not be able to do it by court order, so it would be in court, and it would be at least restrictive as opposed to just releasing an individual. If I'm gonna put them in tension, what alternative do I have, and is it a suitable placement? So it would be in those lines.
And the last topic?
I'll defer to Amy quickly.
I don't have a lot of information about the update because we are currently, as you can see, still in the initial phases of building the garden. But I am told within the next couple of weeks, we should be having all of our stuff in the ground. So we do have lumber that Soil and Water did get for us, where there was a holdup on that because I guess supply and demand chain was a little backed up. But we have, this week, we're looking to have Buildings and Grounds loan Soil and Water the dump truck in order to get the compost that we need. And we're going to be building the beds. So you should see us out there within the next couple of days, a lot. So we should be planting stuff in the ground by the end of next week.
Supervisor McGowan?
Thank you again. Amy, really, I saw the lumber out there the other week and I was so excited. So that's why I kind of pointed what's going on. So what do you need from us to make sure, who's putting them together? Our county facilities?
So Soil and Water, Jake is the contact who has been working with us. He and Zach, I think Scott Rogers is going to be a part of that as well. We'll also have our probation officers out there building, and some of our youth who are who volunteered to be part of the building will be out there as well. So we have who we need. We just need all of the equipment. And we're just waiting on coordination efforts on that. I think everybody's on top of it. We just have to coordinate and time management for that to happen.
All right, I'll stop over and put the heat on Scott for you. Right? No, it'd be nice
And if
because
you want to
we're
go
at our time.
out there, you're welcome to. I mean, we could use all the
My
volunteers.
wife found out I was helping plant here and I won't do it at home. I'd be in trouble.
Well, we have, if you ever look in our windows at the juvenile offices, you can see we have a multitude of plants growing out of our windows. So they're ready to be planted. We just need the boxes and the soil to plant them in. So
All right.
we're any minute now, we're just hoping we get everything coordinated.
All right, thank you for your work on
Thanks.
this. Anything else for probation while they're here? No, move to emergency services. We got 6 requests. The first one is a request to amend resolution 186 of 2023, appointing members of the Warren County Fire Advisory Board.
So we are adding Tyson Converse. He is the current chief of West Falls Fire Department. And that's the request for today.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor McGowan, move it. Second, Supervisor Smith, any questions? Supervisor Leggett.
Oh, just wondering, you had the assistant chief, was there just a?
It's kind of to work together through a transition period.
Okay.
So when we go to next year, when we appoint the next ones next year, it will just be the chief next year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Second, request a resolution to amend capital project H 413-9550 hazard mitigation grant program. Emery?
Yep, so the amendment is needed to correct the budgets for the revenue accounts to reflect actual personnel costs charged to the program. Initially, we were using in-kind contributions, and Rob Lynch had indicated that it really should be reflected as an interfund transfer.
Okay, motion move forward. Supervisor Smith, second. Supervisor McGowan on the question.
Thank you. So how does this work? Why is contingent account involved in this? And if this is all interfund transfers and these are in-kind services from your own salaries on this, please explain.
So most of the direction came from Rob Lynch to kind of even this out. As we move forward, 2022 and 2023 salaries will be put into the interfund transfer account for the grant program. So the grant program was actually created as a capital project, so the funds went into capital project.
Any other questions?
So I'm still trying to get my arms around why there's. If you all had funding, why is anything coming out of contingent and not out of your own? Would it come out of your own regular 130s or 110s? You know,
Again, we'd worked with Rob Lynch on this solution, and he had indicated that we should ask for money from the contingency fund for this year. In 2023, we were not able to reconcile that prior to the closing of 2022. So the money was still kind of left out and we needed to do something with it. And that's why Rob suggested to use the contingency fund for now.
just
Go ahead.
continue to follow up. So the in-kind is usually part of the match. Is
Yes.
that correct? Then, so is there anything reimbursable coming back to the county to cover this? So these would be covered costs?
Some of it should be covered cost, correct?
All right, we have a motion and second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The request is a resolution, request to transfer of funds from A 1990-469 contingent account to A 9550-910. Transfers capital projects in the amount of $2,610.93.
So this was the amount that was left from 2022 that we had not transferred into.
Books were closed. And this is where Rob is suggesting that we use the contingency fund for this.
Motion moved forward. Supervisor McBain. Second. Supervisor Smith. Supervisor Leggett.
I'm still trying to get my head around all of this. Did you have salary left over from? Was there, what, Miss Tammy from 2022
Yes.
that rolled back over into general fund then?
Is that right?
Tammy, go ahead and fill in the blanks.
The recommendation was, this is what the recommendation made by the treasurer's department to use the money from contingency account. There's nothing to say you couldn't, you're right. The money would have gone from any leftover funding would go to the general fund. So you could pull the money from the general fund instead of from contingent account. This was just the recommendation that was made by the treasurer's department.
Supervisor McGowan, follow-up question?
Yeah, so we just approved pulling 429844 for the contingency account,
No, 20,
the one before.
26.
For number two, we weren't talking about contingency for that specific request. It was for request number 3.
Well, where are you trying to get your arms around this there, Supervisor Leggett?
Well, one year falls into another, but there's 2022 and 2023 that were combined in resolution 22. Is that correct?
No, it's just 2023 in resolution 2.
Okay,
I'm confused.
right.
Because didn't we talk about the contingent fund on the last one
Yes.
for the hazard mitigation grant program? Or am I just totally missing it today?
I don't believe
Interfund,
fund plays into request number 2.
that's right. Request number-
Contingency and request number 2.
Say that again, I
Contingency fund does not play into your request number 2. No. It's only number 3.
The word was used in the discussion, though.
It was, yes.
all right, I guess I'm missing it today, but all right. Okay, I think I'm getting a hold of this.
Okay.
Or as Mr. Leggett would say, get my arms around it.
You have motions in a second. All in favor?
All right,
Opposed? Carried. Fourth item is a resolution request transfer of funds from civil defense to capital projects in the amount of $1358.48. Emery?
Yep, and this transfer is needed to provide a funding source for the local match charge, the hazard mitigation grant for the period of January 1st to March 31st of 2023.
Motion. Supervisor Donaldson, second. Supervisor Smith. Supervisor Leggett.
Now, does this fit into the interfund transfers that we just did?
It will go into interfund transfers.
To cover that 4,000 some odd for the hazard mitigation? We're still on the same page with
Yes.
that? But this is. You've covered all your salaries for the year.
Right.
So why are we using any other money if you've already been covered in all of your?
Yeah, I'm not
Very
sure
tall.
if this is an additional that was left that we hadn't moved at the time.
The item number 2 was a change in the revenue source.
Okay.
That's all that was. They're
Yeah.
both revenue codes. So we were changing a revenue source of interfund transfers and we were decreasing, we were increasing interfund transfers and we were decreasing program in kind contributions. There was a discussion about whether this was in kind or what's the
Or
other
interfund transfer.
matching funds.
Yes, so that's
So
basically
that
what we
was,
did in three.
that was item
Yes.
number 2. Item number 3, that was a sure up of our 2022 personnel costs. And because it already fell to the fund balance, that's why we need to do something. We need to acknowledge that today because it's a capital project that covers your multiple years.
I understand.
Number 4, that last item is to recognize the salary costs that should be in kind for the first quarter of 2023. Correct? And so what we're doing now is, so we don't have to do what we did for 2022 and take it out of fund balance. They're doing it now. What they're doing is they're taking it from their salary code, their current 2023 budget salary code, and moving it now. So that it's not in that salary code, it's
Good.
in the
Okay.
capital project. So we won't have to do item number 2. We won't have to do that in 2023 because they're doing it as they go. I don't know if that helps.
It does help. Thank you.
No, Tammy, it really does, because this is the problem when you have one big checkbook, most of us have multiple checkbooks for different things in our house, so. Thank you. Now it makes it a little bit more understandable.
All right, all in favor?
All right.
Opposed, carried. 5th item, resolution request authorizing the chair and the director of emergency services to enter into and execute agreements with various vendors or contractors for an aggregate amount not to exceed $10,000 per year. Emery?
All right, so our office periodically requires contracts with various vendors that exceed the current threshold of $1,001, requiring a board resolution. We're requesting the approval to enter into such contracts for required services as needs arise, provided that each separate agreement does not exceed 10,000 per year.
Okay, motion. Supervisor Leggett, second. Supervisor Smith on the question. Supervisor Smith.
Yeah, we just did this for the sheriff, I think, last time, which was great. My only, and I have no problem with raising the threshold. I'm just wondering, is $10,000 appropriate? I mean, I'm not familiar with the kind of contracts they need.
Right. I think it all depends on what the service is going to be. Some services may require a little more, some not as much. So that's why we were requesting 10,000 to make sure that we were covered up to that, at least for this particular option.
All right, Supervisor McGowan.
Yeah, you say right now we're at $1,001. And now we're going to
10,000.
10,000. Wow.
Yes. Go ahead.
Per agreement.
Yes.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. How does this fit into our overall purchasing and procurement policy and those limits?
So other departments doing it differently?
Well, I think we have a general overall.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is it Tammy or administrator?
They would have to follow our purchasing policy as they're making purchases. When anything over $500, they would still have to have a purchase order. There's certain other quality, and on anything over 20,000, you need to have an RFP done. So they'll have to continue to follow that. A lot of our departments have resolutions in place to allow them to enter into contracts up to a certain dollar amount, some are $5,000. I think we're seeing some departments coming and requesting an increase in those. I believe we did one last month for the sheriff's department, perhaps. I can't remember exactly, but I know some of the departments are asking for that to increase their ability to contract. I know DPW is probably one as well.
Yeah, so,
So Brett, go ahead.
no, thank you, Mr.
Administrator.
Chairman. So this is something that rather than come individually for these types of issues, we can talk about revising our policies across the board and come to you with a recommendation.
Do you want to table this or move this?
Is there anything pressing at OES right now for this?
Emery, is there anything you need this right now?
The one thing that we would like to use this for is to have another contract with a service provider for the Marine Rescue Team for training. So like in this particular case, we might want to have 2 to 3 or maybe 4 individuals take a training that one vendor may not offer, but another vendor does, depending on the time of year and how soon they want to be able to use that training that they've received. So if we had to actually go and contract and have to do committee meeting, a board meeting, it would put us 2 to 3 months out and maybe take us to the end of the summer where the gentlemen or women who are taking the training would be able to use their skills earlier.
Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, the only thing that really just comes really to my mind, I don't have a problem with this understanding of making it ease in that, but is there any wording in there to make sure that this is like budgeted? I mean, we're jumping, $9,000 here. And, it's easy to say, well, we'll do it, but my gosh, it's not in the budget. I mean, not that you would do that. It's just my concern, if we're allowing all the departments to jump this, we better make sure it's in the budget. Otherwise, the whole process to do this is why they have to come to us to make sure that we have the money to do it. Am I seeing this wrong or?
No.
That's just what comes to my mind first. I don't have a problem with this because I understand the process and sometimes the move, especially with the training. We just went through that with, with the hiring the temporary sheriff Friday was, is to get everything in place and moving it forward. I know DMV is another one. It takes like 6 months to train, and if you have nobody, people get angry there.
Administrator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The money would have to be in the budget. So if the money's not in the budget for something, even though they had authority to go to $10,000, but they needed money for that, they would have to come back to the committee and then to the finance committee and then the board for funding. So this just applies for organizations who would have the funding to enable them to award these contracts to vendors.
Just a quick follow-up, just to double check. If it was budgeted for, because you had 1,000 and it goes to 10, but it should be budgeted in their budget for the full amount that they are going for up to $10,000, right?
Yes. So it's not necessarily that it was in the budget for $1,001. That was the limit under which they could award a contract without coming back to this committee or any committee and then to the board for approval. All we're saying is we'd like to increase that amount above the 1,000. So it wasn't that it was 1,000 budgeted. Now we're asking for 10,000. It's just saying we want the authority within the budget to not have to come back to the committee and the board to ask to award a contract over $1,001.
No, and I agree with that. So, but when you're figuring out your budget, you're figuring out everything. And, I just want to make sure that if they budgeted this a particular thing that's going to go up to say 10,000, is that it was budgeted for up to 10,000, but they would have to come to us to move that. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If it's only $1,001, to me, that's all they put in their budget was $1,001. And now you're going up to 10. I don't know, Mr. Conover, am I seeing this wrong here? I mean,
Yeah, no, I think there are two things here. I think number one, I think that there's the question of performance and efficiency in that, you can saddle $1,000 purchase with a lot of administrative costs. Whereas if you delegate, raise the bar a little bit, like we would be doing here, then I think you're just becoming more productive and more efficient than trying to spend who knows how many weeks or months trying to do otherwise. The second point is that, and the treasurer, of course, would be all over this. You can only contract what you have in your budget, and you can only contract in your budget what's unencumbered. So for example, if they enter into a contract for, say they have $30,000, they enter into a contract for $10,000, they only have an unencumbered balance in that account of $20,000. And in any department had the contracts or attempts to contract more than that. Now, it's going to be identified very quickly, but there's probably going to be standing at that podium having to answer some pretty tough questions. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it doesn't. And thank you. I don't have a problem. I like the process, you know, like I said, Supervisor Conover, I agree with that. The process to keep things flowing. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we're not getting any of the directors
Would you
to say,
want,
hey,
to amend the proposal and add a statement that basically says, not to exceed $10,000 per year if the requested funds are appropriated in the current budget? Does it make
I mean, I feel comfortable with that, but I'm only one of, you know, the board here. I mean, if these,
I don't think it's needed, but I don't object to it because it's subject to available dollars. I mean, sometimes what they'll do is they'll come to us for a transfer, you know. That's why at the end of the year, a lot of times you'll see a lot of transfers at the end of the year.
right,
Because they'll transfer from one code into the other code to balance things out at the end of the year.
Okay,
We all do it at town.
well, we'll leave as it, we have got motion, we have a second.
thanks.
Further question, Supervisor Leggett, question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, our duty here is to make department efficiency a priority so that they don't have to come through this whole process and have it be cumbersome. We also are accountable and stewards of keep an eye on. I'd say, let's start with this and then let's look countywide on what really works for our purchasing.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Final request is resolution to accept donation of a ice rescue tool from Adirondack Mountain Tough Tool. Marie?
Right, so we're looking for a resolution to accept the donation. It's valued at $500. And I was actually able to get an opportunity to see the tool in progress and seeing it used. So I think it's definitely something that our Marine Rescue Team members would be able to definitely use. I mean, hopefully we don't ever have to. We don't want that situation, but this will definitely enhance their ability to respond quicker.
Okay, motion Supervisor McGowan, second Supervisor Smith. Question?
I'm sure we're going to be sending out a big thank you. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Emery, any discussion items? Anything else?
Nope, next question.
Thank you for being with us. The public defender agenda. We've got 5 items, I believe. We can combine a couple of them. If I'm mistaken, I think we combine the first 2 or maybe the first 3. First one
helps, I think.
request a salary increase of non-union position. That's Assistant Public Defender number 7. And then there's a request to increase the salary non-union position, Public Defender number 6. So why don't we do those 2? Any objection?
With respect, Chairman, I think these 5 things or 4 things are completely interlinked. First of all, Public Defender Canale is at a symposium in Hudson Falls with Judge Hogan. So I was both domestically and at work instructed to appear here for Mr. Canale on this topic. I've been here before and spoken to the board about the difficulty of recruiting and retaining public employees, particularly licensed ones. In our case, attorneys, but it also extends to nurses as a critical shortage. And a new player has entered, a new factor has entered the game, which is the increase of a assigned counsel fee to $158 an hour. This would even include travel time for attorneys. This was passed by the state legislature. I'm not exactly sure on the reimbursement level. I think it was a mix of county expense and state. This is a law or a legislative fix to address a problem that was in New York City. no, as far as I can tell, consideration of what the impact would be up here. But just on rough back of the envelope numbers, a qualified criminal attorney, meaning it's somebody who's been trained in the DA's office or in the public defender's office, you work 30 hours a week, 35 hours a week for 40 weeks a year and make $190,000 revenue. I don't know how that's going to affect, but I would suspect it's going to make retention of experienced attorneys extremely difficult. We've been unable, we have 2 experienced defense attorney positions that we've been unable to fill. You're aware of the difficulty in recruiting attorneys who have passed the bar. New attorneys, but they passed the bar. That was our current kind of structure. It's not industry standard. Both big firms in Manhattan, DA's offices and public defenders in Manhattan around the state hire postgraduate attorneys who sat for the bar and are waiting results. That's that's successfully, I think, with the trainee position. We have one solid lead because I told you before, we're going to do kind of heavy marketing, which is something that we didn't have to do before. You know, when I became an assistant district attorney, I was asking, you know, Sterling, I was following up on those things. People wanted those positions. We don't have that. We've lost that public, the pension and healthcare at one point were real distinguishing features of a public job that just don't exist anymore. We've got results. We've gone down. We've started our first kind of recruiting thing. We've got some results, but these positions would be necessary to onboard people at that $71,000 entry level salary. But we've got 2 attorneys, as you pointed out. The numbers, I don't remember the numbers. I remember the name, but we've trained them. We've got one who's been admitted and practicing criminal law for 4 years, and Ben also been here doing the job. Nothing's more damaging to retention is if you bring in untrained people, even if it's lightening the workload at exactly the same salary, you're saying your time doesn't mean anything. As I understand it, our losses, our personnel losses on one of the experienced positions will fund these raises, these increases that were proposed. One is not grant funded, one loss. In other words, one attorney position was county funded, and we've not used that money. That loss occurred in April, March. No, it's unusual to ask for raises midstream, but I think environmental factors here have come into play and make us need to think creatively about recruiting and, just as importantly, retaining, you know, those attorneys who have some experience. What I would like to do, and I'm going to propose doing on a kind of a private basis on my own, because I'm curious. I think it's an important data point for the board. What is the cost, assuming normal growth and normal crime patterns? What is the cost to the county for assigned counsel? Projected cost now at 160. And what is the cost per case for a public defender's office? I'm without data. My gut is that the public defender's office has both efficiency of scale, training and support, and is also just more cost effective, including salary and fringe and the grant funding. So we're asking, I think, you all to be creative, sort of midstream. We want to retain 2 people. We want to bring on at least 1, possibly 2 entry-level people, although they're grant funded. The creative piece is to adopt this trainee position I wrote up, which is that pre-bar admission hire. That could be applied to county attorney and DA's office. Not my department, but I imagine, you know, another pool of attorneys who've worked for 4 or 5 years, well-known in the county, well-respected, well-trusted, retire from county service, hang out a shingle and get paid $160 an hour. We're gonna face some challenges. And I'm not suggesting we open up checkbooks and go crazy, but I am saying I think there's going to be some need to address it going forward.
All right, we got a good plan, I think. Is that a motion to move it?
To bring it forward for a discussion, and I'd like to ask some
Okay,
questions.
okay, second. Supervisor,
And this is on.
My motion is to move all the items.
1 through 5.
They're all related.
All right, Supervisor McGowan, you agree with that? 1 through 5?
That's fine, yep.
All right, open for discussion.
Yeah. First question is, what's the net budgetary impact of this after funding sources to this year's budget?
On the closed subject of what we've proposed, zero.
Zero. Okay, so this year it has zero impact on in terms of the county budget. In other words, we would expect that our funding sources would more than compensate us for the actions that were taken here today.
Correct, is not only funding, but our inability to fill to higher level, what I call higher level positions, 70+
Yeah,
thousand.
no, I'm going there next,
Yeah.
believe me.
But yes,
This, we're going to be experiencing this more and more and more. We're seeing it at the municipal level. We're seeing it now in the county and the state's experiencing it as well. We're seeing it in civil service, our testing, which I think is becoming increasingly anemic in terms of the listings. We saw it with CDL drivers. We just approved a merging with Capital District largely because of their inability to secure not only mechanics, but CDL drivers. We know our own experiences at the local level in filling positions is increasingly becoming more difficult. We know nurses, for example, we know that we've more and more relying on per diem and people that have retired that we can get to come back part-time. This is going to be a real challenge going forward. And then we just recently, I think, had our economic development director indicate some number of job vacancies in the county, but it was an enormous number. Does anybody remember what he said at that moment in time? How many vacancies?
I believe it was about 1,500 right now, but it has been as high as 4,000.
So I mean, think about that for a moment. In other words, that our labor force is unable to, in terms of size, supply the up and down the ladder, the labor required for our systems, both public and private. So our operations. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of this, and I support this. I mean, not only because it has no net impact on the budget for this year, but also that I think that we've already had experience with this being successful in the county attorney's office, where we hired somebody out of school, and he did continues to do a great job for us. So I think that this is one way of trying to access the available labor early. Whether it'll be how successful it will be, you don't know. But kudos for making an effort to do that.
I think we've got one very solid applicant, very interested in the area, very interested in the work. We put a big effort in recruiting. We have another solid lead as well. So what really concerns me is the long-term impact of this 160 an hour on a relatively small, well-known pool of attorneys. And are you simply just going to be shifting, it may feel like we're giving somebody a raise to do the same job in terms of Justin and Ben, but really we're preventing them from feeling disenfranchised, not valued, and trying to prevent the slide into having that same person get paid, an outrageous salary, what I consider to be an outrageous salary for upstate New York. I just don't know. I don't know what the impact of that is. We don't know what's the impact, maybe in our favor of an economic slowdown on attorneys or things like that. But right now we're fighting all those environmental factors that nurses, CDLs, and other, special and even entry-level clerical people. And now we have this other factor to take place, which we just don't know the impact of.
You make me think about, is it possible, how would we go about, perhaps we could, in addition, have a program whereby we could aid law school students with the cost of education by providing them summer employment under some terms and conditions where you, not only do you access them upon graduation, but maybe there could be a training position even earlier.
That is how major law firms. Their revenue sources are kind of on a relative basis, lower scaled entry level attorneys. That's how they make their money. So they bring them in between their second and third year of law school, try figure that, kind of seduce them in essence, and then work them to death. But in our case, it would be exposure to the criminal justice system, positive exposure to the county, the area, the workforce, and the value of the work. And you could use that as a recruiting tool. That's a critical piece, and we need to develop that as well. We also need to expand our recruitment efforts. I got involved in doing a recruiting effort way behind the 8 ball in terms of the cycle. The cycle starts, in September. You get down to these law schools and you hit more than one law schools. I was able to hit 3. And we had one from Western New England School of Law, the other 2 are from Albany. We've got to expand that reach a little bit. And we have to expand a reach of recruiting experienced attorneys who may want to come to the area. Again, using the area as a way of recruiting. But we're gonna have to do something and be flexible about experienced level attorneys and how we're compensating them. And when we start talking about this, there's the other half of the equation, the DA's office. And they're going to have retention and development issues as well. So I do think a lot of these programs could be mimicked by both the DA's office and to a lesser extent, the county attorney's office. I kind of leave them out of it because they don't have the numbers they're bringing in. Although they may have for the family court stuff. I don't know.
Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you. Over the years, the public defender's office has grown largely, and there are many more attorneys on here. Obviously, must respond to a demand. We all know that caseload is one of those things that come in. You made a very good point, selling for higher rates on things. There is salary creep, though. Now, if you take number 6 and number 7 and you move them up, they're pushing number 9. And you've jumped over number 3. But and I see Erin shaking her head here, but I'm going by a salary schedule. So we'll correct. Let me get this off my chest.
Just so you know, number 3 is not here anymore. She's gone. Nor is 3 and 9 aren't with the office anymore. These are the high level experienced bosses that I've talked about that we have now, and I'm projecting more out.
Have those positions been eliminated off your salary schedule?
They have not been eliminated. They simply not filled. We're trying to fill them. One is grant funded and one is county funded.
Okay. So we are trying to fill those. Plus there's a number 10 and number 11 and a part-time number 12.
Yeah. Number 12 are part-time positions by people who were previously employed by the state or the county are capped at 35,000. You can't adjust that salary.
So what we as a county are looking at here, we have 5 departments with attorneys. There's the public defenders, the district attorneys, the Department of Social Services, and county attorney. Am I missing one? And all of these, we came into a lot of disparity between all of the attorneys. And I'm just going to assume all attorneys are created the same. If you have legal needs, they have a certain value to them. So that if you are over in DSS, your level of experience and pay should be equal to what you're getting in a DA's office or PD's office. This was argued by the former PD, Marcia Flores, very successfully to bring up the rates and to be level with the DA. Then the DA comes in and says, we need to raise the rates because we're competing on a larger scale. So the PD office comes in, we need to raise our rates to be competitive with the DA. DSS comes in and says, we need to raise our rates to be competitive with everybody else. The county attorney comes in, we need to raise our rates in order to be. this is what we're dealing with here.
Absolutely.
One moment,
Yeah.
please, if I may, since I'm on roll.
That's all right. There you go.
And also, I'm going to look over here at the budget officer. I do believe that these rates that we see before us received the 5720 from last year that everybody got. Plus, there was probably a step grade increase. Was there not at all?
Not in these two positions. My understanding is they received a countywide raise.
Yep.
They're not given a step, and that's why we've created this entry level problem.
And why were they not given a step?
As I understood it, the county did not do that yearly increment,
Okay,
2022 to 2023.
okay, thank you for that clarification. Good. And I'd like to see with the county administrator who has the broader view overall on how all these departments work. Are these increases being asked for today in line or would push in other departments where we're just going to see next month the DA is going to be in here or the county attorney or DSS is going to be in here? So by May.
I'll let the administrator go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the salary schedule now. So I'll tell you that the county administrator position is that we do not like to come in for raises mid-year. Once they've been determined by the budget. In the future, my preference will be to always have discussions for salary at budget time, set salaries, and those will stand for the year. And I've already had a couple of departments and talked to them about coming in for mid-cycle increases that we weren't going to do. So in this case, I have talked to the other organizations, agencies who have attorneys at the base level. And I believe we can support the increases with these without causing issues with other departments and agencies, but I will work closely with them next year to determine what the salary schedule needs to look like. We know we're getting pressure on attorney positions. We mentioned there are others. We're getting, if you look at what we have for nurses, for example, we have per diem nurses who are ages above 60. It's just hard to attract certain types of skills to the county, and we're going to have to take a look at that next year. Very hard look at that next year at the budget process, and I think we'll have to look at attorney salaries now because, again, it's like we've said, $158 an hour is going to put enormous pressure on some of our attorneys at the base salary level of $71,015. Because they can make almost twice that working assigned counsel and taking the hourly amount that we're paying the public defender. So that will cause trouble. I'll work very closely with the DA and with the county attorney, primarily, I know with the DA, public defender, to look at our salaries next year and make sure we're competitive, but also since the budget officer is here, that there are things we can afford. So in this case, I believe, aren't both of these paid by Harrell Herring?
One is, actually, neither of these two positions that we're talking about are covered by Harrell Herring, but the increase in salary is covered by the vacancy created. There's no doubt about this, that I'm as concerned as a county taxpayer, and we'll be out of this business pretty quickly. I'm concerned about salary creep and trying to keep up with all these things. And so you have, although I think this is a relatively modest increase that's been and will solve the mid-year problem if we've adopted this trainee, this entry-level position, you'll be able to keep the spacing going forward and not do this mid-year going forward. What's different about public defender, if the DA's office is not there to do the job doesn't get done, just simply doesn't get done. Internal, DSS, other functions just simply don't happen, or they don't happen at a high level. What happens immediately here is the cost is shifted to that 160 an hour capacity. It goes out of the public defender. There's not a public defender there to handle it. Case goes to that 160. And what I do think going forward is we need to see what impact that has, how costly that impact is. And right now, I'm only speculating, right? If you're there, the DA's office, for example, 6 years, and you make $80,000, which I couldn't manage it making that much money here years ago. And you can double it by walking out the door. I don't know what impact that's gonna have. I do know an immediate impact is gonna happen that when you have empty positions at public defender, it's gonna, and it's gonna impact that 160. Also, as attorneys are not all created equal, and experience and positions vary. Someone who has 10 years experience can handle a larger number of cases effectively. I think that's too speculative to worry about, but I really am concerned about what effect going forward this is just the state stepping into a mixed public-private market and really messing with salaries. Just, we don't know.
Supervisor Connell.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this last year. We saw it with the enormous, the significant increase the state provided for lifeguards. I mean, they just made a huge increase, and they did the same thing with CDL drivers and including paying for training and schooling and whatever to get your CDL license. But I'm also wondering, the state being also a 800-pound gorilla relative to the hiring of public sector attorneys, what their response is going to be as I
understand it, there's a full-blown re-examination of positions, descriptions, and salary schedules, which they do every time this happens, just like they'll overreact the other way should there be a slowdown. That's something that's going to take a while, but every public employer that's looking for attorneys, the attorney general, the rest of it are under pressure.
I mean, it takes a while until somebody decides it's an emergency, and then in that situation, all of a sudden, bang, the decision's made. And then,
Well, that's what happened here.
But I can answer your
Some sort of
question.
emergency in the 5 boroughs, right? 160 an hour, we need to do it. It's going to solve all our problems. And then with the zero, I don't want to sound cynical as I am. I want to hide that. With zero study on what that would happen upstate to public defender's office.
but I think I can answer your question is, I mean, what you're going to see or hear is a huge sucking sound. That's what you're going to hear. I mean, it's such a huge increase over public defender vis-a-vis court-assigned counsel. I mean, that's
Paying more than assistant attorney generals.
well, I can work half the hours.
ADA.
Even if I wanted to work half the hour, they could work half the hours and make as much money. Right.
It's scary. Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, the numbers are talking about billing somewhere around 30 hours a week for 40 weeks and pulling in a revenue of about 180 to 190. That's a lot of money. I know you've got expenses. I know there are things, but you know, what is the fringe? 30,000 on these positions? You're still clearing 80,000 more.
I'm with Supervisor Conover. This is a losing battle. This really is. It's not a matter of, you couldn't get enough Dutch boys to plug the dikes in the stand. I think it's going to go away. So I think we might be okay this year, maybe even next year, but I think in the long term, we probably should start getting out ahead of that and figuring out what's going to go on.
I think
nothing we can do today, but there's got to be some kind of.
I think you're right. I think I do think we should study the cost and projected costs. And there are counties that do in-house conflict attorneys. You have a public defender's office and you have a conflict counsel.
Yeah.
And that cuts down on the amount of assigned counsel significantly. But I'm thinking creatively right now, but we haven't done out like, okay, what's that? You got to pay those people. What is the cost? What are the numbers that can be handled? And what would you be saving over time versus the 160 an hour? I think the administrator had something to say.
The last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, we'll take a look. The other thing we look closely at is the local market. So we'll have to see what the local market does, but right now, our starting salary for attorneys coming into the county is relatively consistent with what the private law firms are offering new graduates as they come to work. So we'll have to watch that closely, see what changes there are there, because our local market's going to play a big role in salary setting, for attorneys. So we'll take this on and we'll come back to the committee at some point in the future after we've taken a look at all the rest of the attorney.
All right, thank you.
But it'll be next year.
Okay.
Do we need a Form 7 for this? There's going to be any amendment to the budgets on these salary increases. You have it for the new positions, the 2 new positions. But is there any amendments or adjustments that need to be made for the salary increases that we need?
I believe that these are budget neutral. Even if we hired the 2 new incoming attorneys, if we get lucky and get 2, they're grant funded, that's stable. The budget itself, again, these raises are revenue neutral, expense neutral based on the fact that we were unable to fill a county funded position at 73. So the budget wouldn't change, we'd probably even still save money. I don't know. I'm asking. No pressure.
The first 2 items, there is no change to the budget for those because of a vacant position that will cover them. For items 3 and 4, there is an amendment to bring in and grant funding from Harrell Herring to cover those 2 positions.
All right, we have a motion recap 1 through 5. We have a second. We have good discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for.
Sorry for being so long.
Hey, man.
All right. Open up the privilege of the floor. Anyone? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry, Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just for information of the committee, because I think it affects this committee. We will be issuing our emergency proclamation sometime this morning. Basically, it will state that we're telling any hotel, motel, Airbnb, any owner who would have the ability to potentially house migrants, cannot enter into any agreement to do so without first coming to the board for a resolution approving that. So that'll go into effect today. It's similar to the COVID proclamation, emergency action. It will have to be renewed and refiled every 5 days, and we'll continue to do that.
I do have a question on that. My brother's the head, well, he's down at the EOC, Office of Emergency Management. And they were down in New York City and they were questioning the legality of these things because these emergency powers need to, there has to be a threat to the community. There's no threat from these people. So I'm just wondering if the county attorney's taking that into consideration. I know he's not here, but.
So the county attorney coincidentally is at a county attorney and all county attorneys conference down in Cooperstown, and they discussed this all day yesterday. It is the belief of the county attorneys who were there that this will stand in a court of law. And a matter of fact, I had one from the county attorney yesterday, and after further discussions with additional attorneys, he changed the resolution today to make it more upholdable by a court. So we believe that we're in good standing on this. And we had a meeting. I had my first task force meeting with the departments yesterday. Basically, what we're looking at is impact to the county could be up to $5,000 per person who enters the county for the social services, the public health services, everything else that's necessary to support the individuals who would come in. we don't really have the housing available, and we may have positions. That's something that we've all been talking about, available work positions, particularly during the summertime. But the cost to the county could be significant. For 50 asylum seekers, $250,000 a month to the county. So those are the things that we need to consider going forward as we talk about a way to do this.
Just one quick question. If they're undocumented, what's the obligation of us to provide those services? We're not obligated to provide those, are we? We're just doing it out of compassion.
We're being told.
I do not have an answer to that as far as.
Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's the reason for the emergency orders, to get our ducks in a row. It's not as if don't come at all, but it is $250,000 a month plus these other things can create an emergency situation on part of the county to be able to provide these services, have the staffing and the funds available. And so that is what we are doing. If I remember correctly, it's buying time. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. We're taking a look at all the services we provide. Initially, we just did our departments, excuse me. We are now bringing in, for example, Hudson Headwaters. They're doing analysis themselves. Glens Falls Hospital is, Open Door Mission, Salvation Army, Red Cross. Everyone has been conducting their own reviews on how they would manage a situation. So we're going to bring them all together on Friday and talk as a group in the county, try to coordinate everything we're doing.
Supervisor McGowan, you had a question?
No, you kind of answered me along. I know we're running late, so my main question is, you wanted to meet with the directors first. So now, do we have a full-fledged committee together, or are you still putting that together?
We do in the county internally. What we determined yesterday was that we needed to bring in some of the community leaders. And again, this committee is not to decide for or against. Basically, our going in assumption is if we were in a situation where we would have migrants or asylum seekers coming to Warren County, what will it take as a county to respond to that adequately? That's what.
So, like, my main question is, if we bring these people in, they're undocumented, they don't have a green card, but if they can work, why, can we say, look, you come to the county, you have to have a job, otherwise you can't come? And then you hear, well, they're undocumented, they don't have a green card, so they can't work. So I don't understand. And I'm not trying to get into it. I just,
I think the legalities of that, there are different situations and different levels. New York City has yesterday, the governor had a meeting with the county leaders, and she said everyone coming from New York City would have a parole card, I believe it's called, and they would be able to work at jobs in the county. Other issues are healthcare. We'd have to provide healthcare. We were concerned about everyone who comes into the county would have to have like a TB test, have it verified by a nurse 3 days later. That would be an expense to us. They're saying that that's going to happen in New York City before any of the migrants.
that we used to do at Ellis Island back in the day.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
We have one more question. Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was just curious, is there any federal or state funding, or is New York City covering this all on their own?
Right now, it appears New York City is covering this all on their own, and it looks like initially, they said they would provide funding to house migrants that they were moving outside the city. But that would be the extent, and I believe it only goes for 4 months, and then after that, it's up to the counties. Now, we could apply for state funding, and that's one of the reasons. The other reason there are 2 reasons for the emergency action, the proclamation.
One is to at least control the flow internally by telling the possible business owners they could not accept migrants without permission from the county. The second point in that is to enable our ability to get state funding assistance if we do. And we needed to have this proclamation to get that, so state funding.
All right, much more on this topic to come. Thank you for your leadership on it. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, seeing no other discussion, I'm open to adjourn. Supervisor Leggett, Supervisor Smith, any discussion, question on it? Adjourn. Thank you.